Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, idiot, and loin streamer, and today we're going to be talking about giving book reviews to your friends or to people that you know, and like how to maybe try going about it. Now, there are multiple ways in which to do this, and there is no one size fits all for anything. I mean, there's not even a one size fits all for breakfast. So why would something as personal as discussing somebody's art or book-like product be any different? There's no one size fits all. So I'll be looking forward to your guys' discussions or experiences or recommendations down in the comments below, but I'm gonna discuss like how I approach it and my recommendations, and feel free to cannibalize as much or as little as you want. But this was a subject that was asked of me to discuss, and so I'm going to do the best that I can to discuss like how I do stuff on this channel. And generally, when I'm sharing the tips or the recommendations or the techniques that appear on this channel, I say what I've seen and often what I do. Now, I don't always express things that I specifically do when I'll say things that other people do or that I have observed, but I do try to share knowledge and also practical stuff that I know that I use to best serve other people. So I'm going to give you guys just some general ideas of what I consider when I approach, and then I'm going to share the form that I actually use when I'm writing my book discussions for this channel, which you can see the format of in pretty much almost all of my book reviews. This is what it has become standard of at this point, and it may or may not change in the future, but it is pretty pretty normalized for me at this point. But before we get started, number one, if you enjoy what I do here on the channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number two, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the links down in the description below. The number one way to be featured is through Leigh, the monthly prompt writing contest, where I give you a prompt, you write a short story using the prompt, and on the first Monday video of the month, we bask in your guys' creativity, just get you out there, get you used to being seen by an audience if you've never been shared with an audience before, and to just have fun. It's about exploring ideas and having zero pressure, which I know, but if I'm anything to go by, which I'm not, I'm kind of a weirdo, but we can put a lot of pressure on ourselves to get things just like perfectly right. And I think little exercises like Leigh or any other sort of just flash fiction, small projects can help free up the mind and the pressure that we put on ourselves for getting our stories perfect. The second way to be featured is if you are an indie author and to a book out or a book that is coming out. If you submit the first chapter and the cover, that chapter will be read here on the channel to hopefully help more readers find your work. The third way to be featured is if you are an unpublished author or you have an unpublished book, or I guess even a book that's published that you would like feedback on chapter by chapter, or a short story. If you click the crit this link in my link tree, you can read all the rules there for having your book critiqued on this channel. And then the fourth way is if you would like me to read a book specifically, whether it is yours or something that you are interested in seeing my feedback on, there is another link for book suggestions or read suggestions on the link tree. Those are chosen at random, but if you want your book read here, put it in that section. The third thing is if you would like to check out any of my books, they're available at any of your favorite places to get books. With that said, let's jump into the topic. Let's waste no more time on this. The first thing that you need to do when you agree or are considering to do a book review or feedback of any kind, whether it is for a friend or a not friend, like this is pretty universal, is to steel yourself. Because whether you know the author or not, it still is hard because often, especially if this is the first time that you're writing a critical response, now this is specifically for critical responses because it's super easy to give positive reviews. It is not super easy to give critical reviews because you never know how the author is going to respond, especially if they're your friend. There are often people that will ask other friends to write them book reviews for their books and expect it to be positive and complimentary just because they're friends. I even have had people ask me to give them feedback, like critical feedback on their books. And when I briefly talked about grammar, they lost their mind and got so upset they got drunk because I was critical of anything in their book. And they ask me to be critical. So even when people say, hey, can you be honest with me? Can you tell me how my book is? Can you give me true feedback? It doesn't mean that they're always looking for feedback. Now, you don't have to read their mind because that's that is irrational. That is unreasonable. But you do have to seal yourself, and I completely understand like the fear and the hesitation and the caution that comes with writing a response to a book, whether it's a review or a discussion, and whether it's for somebody you know or you don't know. It just so happens that if it's somebody that you do know, then you're going to likely have to see them again, talk to them again. You might worry about losing a friendship if or an acquaintance, depending on what they are. If they're friends, hopefully they don't like chop you because you say something critical about their book. But you do have to steel yourself. And unfortunately, like I think it's on the authors too that once they put their work out there in the public sphere for readers to have their own experiences with it, you just have to let it go. Like, yeah, people are going to like or dislike the things that are in your story or in your book. But the most important thing is did you accomplish what you were trying to accomplish? Did you express what you were trying to express? And I actually watched a video yesterday that was sent to me. Thank you. I think it's really meaningful of when Death Stranding came out and the reviews of that game and Kojima. And this line stood out to me.
It's the same as when I first brought out a stealth game. If 100 people play it and 100 people say it's fun, it means the genre or the game already exists. But this is a new genre, same as stealth the first time. There will be people who don't get it. It will take time for the real evaluations to come in. Hideo understood the risk that people might not accept it, but for him it was worth it to push the boundaries of the medium and create something unique. On November 8th, 2019, Death Stranding was released on PlayStation 4 to mixed reviews. While it received numerous perfect scores, other major gaming websites gave it plenty of 6s and 7s out of 10. Some reviewers even rated it a 5 out of 10 or lower. As a result, critiques ranged from "Death Stranding is dizzying, unshakable in its belief it is doing something worthwhile, and is one of the most important games of this decade," to "an irredeemable piece of garbage that should serve as a warning to publishers who give developers carte blanche to create quote-unquote art."
Now you've got a bunch of people who loved the ideas and loved the creativity and the ingenuity behind Kojima's Death Stranding, which is a very different sort of game. He had very different takes on what he wanted to do. And personally, I love the design. And the more that I learn about the game, the more I love it. And I am so grateful to be getting to play this game and to be understanding Kojima's vision and that he got the freedom to do what he wanted to do. It's one of the things that I love about indie is never being beholden to corporations and the slog of like, you need to fit into this mold and do this thing. And yeah, it's a slower process. If you even ever get noticed, I don't know if I will ever have anything that I do get noticed. I hope that my stuff is meaningful to people. I hope at some point it finds somebody that wants to do something with it. But I am always grateful when I see somebody who is creative like Kojima be able to make it, and not only make it, but to be able to do what he wanted and to have his vision created without censorship of what he wanted to do. Like that is, and to be surrounded by other creative people who fully support it. Like you get in with the other groups of people that are involved in Death Stranding and you see like, it's just, for me, when the more I learn about it and then like as I'm playing it, it is a love letter to creativity and to all of the things that Kojima has grown up with, has loved, has been driven towards, and I'm so grateful for that sort of thing. Anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent slightly, but I don't even remember what I was talking about. Steel yourself. Oh yeah, that's what I was saying. So the most important thing is to get this idea of whether or not you accomplished what you were trying to accomplish, express what you were trying to express for the majority of your work. Not everybody is going to understand what you were trying to do, but you do want to try and find people who see what you're doing, understand what you're doing, and then help you better. This is for critical, like crit reading, crit partners, beta readers, not for reviewers. Reviewers have no responsibility whatsoever to help better the author. Reviewers are just consumers discussing their experience with a thing. But crit partners or beta readers are in conversation with the creator. And the creator, just as the creator, you just need to try to do your best to get your vision out there of what you were trying to accomplish. And it'll speak to some people and it won't speak to other people. And that's one of the things that creators also need to do, is to steel yourself that, did you accomplish what you were trying to accomplish? Did you express what you were trying to express? Now that it's out in the world, people are going to interact with it and have an experience with it that is personal and individual and inspired both by your creativity talking to their experience. And that's the best that you can do. You can never control other people's experiences. You can do your best to tell your story, but ultimately other people will have their own experiences with your work, and that's just how it is. So, getting back to the point of this, stealing yourself for responding to somebody's work, because, like I said, the author or creators of something are putting themselves in their work, as long as it's not like a carbon copy of like a product. There are so many writers. I refuse to call them authors because I don't consider them artists in any way. But there are so many that just do basically paint by number books and just push out as many books as possible because it's a product line. It is just a gig work. So it's not art. It's not an expression of much of anything. Sure, it's got parts of themselves in it because you can't get away from that when you're creating something out of you. But it's not art. It's just product. But when you're discussing something that is personal, whether it is the creator put themselves in the book with, like, they did a self-insert, they are highly recognized as the main character or something, then when you criticize the book, or it's got their experiences in there specifically, so it feels much like them, that can end up with the author or creator feeling personally attacked by your discussing of the book or criticizing of the book, especially that character that is their stand-in, because it feels like you are going after them, or discussing and criticizing the ideas of the theme, as what happened with Sam Fenna's book. There are also people that will expect you to experience the book in the same way that they wrote it, and that again is like Sam Fenna's book, where you cannot control how people read your work. It's just how it is. And so prepare yourself that you may think that it is super obvious what you wrote, but not only is a book an exposure of like how the author thinks and rationalizes the world, but it is also going to be interpreted by the mirror of the reader. So your experiences may or may not be the same. Your interpretation of stuff may or may not be the same. And personally, I think that's what's interesting about book discussion or art discussion, period, is the way that we are all going to bring our own experiences and personalities and ideas to the interpretation of what we're looking at. Now, that is separate from what is the author's intent and the whole death of the author thing, which I disagree with vehemently. Like, I think you can have your entire own interpretation of something, but I don't think that your interpretation can overwrite what the author's intent was. And I think it's more interesting to compare what it is you experienced versus what the author's intent was. But I do not believe that the reader gets to say, I experienced this, and thus this is what the author meant. You can say, I experienced this, and this is how I took it, but then projecting it onto the author as this is what the author meant, I disagree with entirely. Everything that we do as creators, and again, I'm like the Kojima video is so fresh in my head, so I'm sorry for, and we're playing Death Stranding, so I'm sorry it's like so direct, but like you listen to this video and I'll link it in the description below if you're interested in watching it. But everything that we put in our work comes from something that we've experienced, opinions that have changed, experiences that we've had, emotional things that we've had. Like, I can spot stuff in all of my books that come from parts of me or things I've experienced or things that I've thought or things that I've seen. And somebody else may see those things and interpret them completely different because they lack those experiences. They lack that insight. They lack that perspective. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's something that needs to be understood, is when somebody is approaching your work, they're going to come at it with different perspectives. And they may or may not get what you're going for. They're going to come from it from a different way. And I think the comparison and even discussion of different perspectives over the same situation is incredibly interesting. Funny enough, just talking to Monty about this for the Legend of Bill Cassidy prequel, with Bill and Silas experiencing something and then going in completely different directions after that. And I find that such a fascinating idea that I can't wait to explore. I'm so excited. I love working on this book. I love these characters, and I am so excited to experience and explore Bill and Silas as younger men and as outlaws before the kids became a thing. I mean, the kids are going to be in the prequel eventually because they play a huge part in what happens with Bill, but still. Anyway, getting to the next thing, when you're doing a book response, make sure you know what the author is looking for. Is it a beta reader? Is it a crit partner? Or is it an advanced reader or a reader review in general? Because these are all different things, different purposes, different audiences. A reader review is just your response as a person reading the book, and it is to other readers. And some authors will still accept, some writers will still expect you to write something positive and something complimentary all the time because they see your review as a marketing tool. And so, like, if you give a critical review or a negative review, then they'll see that as you trying to ruin their business, as opposed to it just being your opinion. And that critical reviews or negative responses can also sell ideas, because what you may not have liked, somebody else may like, or somebody may want to see what is in that book based on what you've said, to see if that's true, to see it for themselves, like all sorts of things. But know what the thing is that your friend is asking for. If it's a crit partner or a beta reader, crit partners are generally being requested to give more information on what they're looking at and how deeply they're looking. It could be character interaction, it could be pacing, it could be a whole lot of things. Whereas a beta reader, I think, is a level down from crit partner, where you can be less specific and you're kind of just giving a vibe response, as opposed to like very close critical reading with very close critical comments. But so know what these are and try to gauge the level of honesty you can have with the person. Also, always, always, always try to be respectful and careful in the way that you're critiquing something if you're talking directly to the creator, because by being gentle, you are much more likely to be able to help them and not engage their defensiveness. Because I think that's just a secondary, like an instinctual response to being criticized that a lot of people have. And it's fear, and you'll end up feeling like a failure either way. And it's just something that as a creator, you kind of learn to cope with, and you push through and you keep going. I mean, I go through it all the time. Unfortunately, but what am I going to do? Stop writing? I can't. I have so much that I want to create, that I want to say, that I want to show about, just like the things that I see, the characters I hear. I can't stop. As sad as I am sometimes, and as much as it's like, what the heck am I doing? I don't think I can stop creating. Along with the steel yourself, I know this is somewhat backtracking. I am not very good at organizing my thoughts here, but know that some writers will always react poorly to anything critical that is said, even if you say it in the nicest way. And you might even not say something critical. You might just say something unexpected, like the writer put a thing in there and you interpreted it a completely different way, and you may have interpreted it in a completely good way. You may be complimenting it by being said in this other way, but they may be upset still that you didn't take things the way that they wanted you to take it. And just prepare yourself. Try to know, if they're your friend, what sort of person they are and where you can go with it. Friend is also, I mean, you could be in a crit group, so you may have to be exposed to this person either way, because you're in an association or a crit group together, and you're not friends, but you know each other. You have to see each other. There are all kinds of complicated relationships. Anyway, going on. Many people, when they don't like a story, but they know the author, will not put a star rating, but will just put an opinion, especially a vague opinion based on the concept or the overall book, instead of anything specific and instead of any likes or dislikes. I've talked about this before with When No One Is Watching, Shadow of the Conqueror, and there are others. But so people that don't want to make waves and didn't particularly like something, you will usually see no stars listed and just a conceptual response. Now, a couple other things. Let's get into some hot takes here. I mean, let's do a feedback hot take here. There is no such thing as objective storytelling. Like, I'm sorry to tell all of the essayist channels on this this platform, but there is no such thing as objective storytelling. I mean, you can ask things of, is there a plot? Are there characters? What is the pacing? Is it fast, medium, or slow? Are there themes? Is the spelling correct? Those are all objective questions. Objective is going to be yes or no. Like, is there a door? Is there a bag? Is the bag red? Those are objective questions. Now, you start getting into subjective with, does the door look nice? Does the bag look expensive? You know, because whether somebody sees something as expensive or nice looking is a personal opinion. That's all subjective. And so just because I say there's no such thing as objective storytelling does not mean that there are not craft elements to learn to try to tell a good story. But just because you use those elements, or like you pick up every single book on storytelling that there is and then try to read all of the craft things and then try to follow them to a T, does not mean that you are going to write a good story because you followed these craft books to a T. There's so much more involved in telling a story that is entertaining, and that is, at the end of the day, what you need to do to tell an enjoyable story. Entertaining, it needs to connect to people in some way or another, and you can have all of the terrible things in the world in that book and it still just be enjoyable because of the concepts of it. I like to use Empress Teresa as an example because, unironically, I think that book is so much fun. Now, it has slow pacing in parts. I think it drags on in parts because of like her learning how to use her powers. Some of the vacations that she goes on that take a little while. The formatting is kind of messed up. The grammar and spelling is not perfect. It's so whatever. But I think the story is so fun and so creative and so ridiculous that I had so much fun with it. However, obviously, if you look at the rating on that book, it is terrible because people don't like the things that I liked about it. And that is what it comes down to, is you can see so many books that have so many flaws. Like, these characters don't make sense. There's no action, there's no plot, there's no whatever, but they emotionally connected to it. And that is part of enjoying or not enjoying a story. And everybody is going to approach a story differently. So when I say there's no such thing as objective storytelling, it's that the things that I like may not be enjoyed by somebody else, and vice versa. Some people want so much world building that there is a world building Bible within the book. I don't like that. Some people don't like the level of character growth or character exploration that I specifically like in books because they want more action packed. They want bigger action storylines than what I do, which is more character driven, smaller plot lines. So when I say there's no such thing as objective storytelling, just know that different people look for different things, enjoy different things, and there is no one size fits all that will make a book great or not great. Again, it is all personal experience, personal expectations, and personal feelings on something. And some people read for their emotions, and what they remember is what they feel, and that's going to be their thing. Some people are reading for the genre and did it meet their expectations in that genre. Some people just even do high ratings because the twists surprise them. And I'll be like, that twist came out of nowhere. Where the frick was the lead up to this? It didn't exist. But that's a different way in which we experience books. So just know, no such thing as objective storytelling. This goes all the way back to just try to know what it is you're wanting to accomplish in your story, and understand other people may not get the same thing, but just try to tell the story, your story, the best that you can. Now, I'm kind of keep going on about this in like a creator's perspective, but it kind of goes, I have to discuss it in a creator's perspective as well as a feedback perspective because you can have both. Anyway, when it comes to doing feedback, and this is also figure if you're doing critique partner or reviewer, but we're going to stick with the reviewer's perspective for most of this, I think, or yeah, because that's less critical and we're discussing it as a reader. Figure out whether you want to judge the book based on your own personal tastes and experiences, or if it's the overall idea. Because that's also a way to approach your friend's work, is rather than saying whether you like it or not personally, you can go, okay, this was the genre. These are the things that happened in this book. Does this fit within the genre? And would this be appreciated generally by people in that genre? If you feel comfortable enough to be like, well, this is a thriller. It hits the thriller beats, I think. I think thriller people would enjoy this, but that's separate from your personal opinion. Personally, when I'm doing book discussions on this channel or book reviews on Goodreads, I only use my personal taste and experiences, partially because I want people to know what I like, so when they recommend me books, it's hopefully something that I will eventually actually like to read, not just like anything and everything because I give everything 5 stars. I don't. I give most things like 1 or 2 stars, honestly. Unfortunately. But also, when you're doing a book review publicly, you're using your voice, your identity, your credibility as something to discuss someone else's story and to get other people to read it, whether or not you're trying to do that. And I have people who I respect who have said great things about books that I did not like. And it doesn't make me dislike them at all. It just shows me a different way in which they approach stories. And it also tells me how they read books, which is one of my favorite things, is our different approaches to books and how we look at things differently. But I remember some books that I have graded poorly on this channel that were given high ratings by people that I know, because of the concepts especially, or were given low ratings because of the concepts especially. Now, it's also very common when people don't like a book at all, or struggled with a book, they just won't leave a book review, period, because it's seen as detrimental to writers, and they just don't want to leave any critical review that might affect the author, especially if the author or writer is an indie with very few reviews, because then it is seen as an assault on their business. And I've seen so many people get upset and throw word fists because it's on the internet all the time. But we'll throw little fits about receiving critical reviews that it's like, oh no, you're gonna ruin my business. One review, a handful of reviews, is not gonna ruin your business. And if your whole thing is don't talk poorly about my book because it's my business, then you're not in it for the right reason anyway, according, from my opinion, because you don't care about the reader's experience. You just care about making money, and you'll do that with under false pretenses of everybody kissing your booty. Like, I'm sorry, we've already gone over this. Not everyone is going to love what you do. Under no circumstances, however, if you are discussing a book for your friend, by your friend, whatever, should you be patronizing to them in your critical responses? Because that's just rude. Like, I don't know. There's no reason to be patronizing, period, to your friends, unless it's a joke that you guys get. But I think gauge the temperature of the water, because patronizing somebody for their art, and not in a giving them money kind of way, but talking down to them kind of way, is a great way to make people upset, because it is just so rude and unnecessary most of the time. And remember, the more aggressive you are, or the harsher you are in the way that you talk, the more insulting you are in the way you talk about this stuff, the more likely they are to slam the door on you and get defensive and not ever listen to you, and maybe even get mad at you. So those are things all to consider. Now, when I'm doing book reviews on this channel, like I do on an almost weekly basis, that I try to do on a weekly basis, obviously didn't happen this week because I'm reading very slow right now. I think I'm a little sick, but not to make excuses. But when I do book reviews and when I critique people, I do critiques a little bit differently, because I'll write in the margins when I'm working one-on-one with people as well, and I'll leave comments in a story. But when I'm doing the book reviews on this channel and the book discussions, I actually have a form that I fill out as I go, and I put my thoughts into. And so I'm going to share with you guys the different things that I do when I'm discussing a book, and you are free to take these and cannibalize them to your heart's extent, to get, if you feel like it, to get an idea of how to approach. And these things are all things you can talk about from a craft perspective, from a reviewer perspective, a more objective perspective of like, is there a plot? What is the language like? What is the description like? So we're going to get into this really quickly. The form should be fairly straightforward, and I'll tell you how I edit it as well. So this is what it looks like when I open a book, an empty book review thing. And I always have my opening comments, which you see at the beginning of my videos, where are just either my thoughts before I actually read the book, how I came to the book, or just prefacing before we get into it. I write synopsises for the chapters because, one, it helps authors know what's in the book, like what's being perceived of their book, because sometimes authors don't know what is connecting, what is not connecting, and I try to put in what stands out to me in order to tell the story moving forward, or to show the pacing, because sometimes I'll throw in a lot of things in there that does not actually move the story forward, because I want others who are listening to the story to see what the pacing is like and where it is slow. If I only said things that move the story forward, then you're not going to get an idea of what the pacing is like, if it is super slow or if it skips around. So that's why I do synopsises. After I get through the synopsis of the story, I have started saying the genre/audience that I think the book is for, just because why not? I also discuss the hook, which is going to be like maybe the first 30 pages to 50 pages, usually the first like 10-15% of the book. So the hook is going to discuss like what the setup is, who the main character is/are, like what is being set up, and the conflict that is being set up or shown in the story. And I pause when I get to that 10 to 15% and write down what I'm seeing so that it is specifically without me knowing what happens in the rest of the story, so that it can basically be like, this was the setup that it presented, and then as I go forward I can see if it fulfilled that setup. And it tells you the hints, and you'll see, like, I did this in my crit this video that I've done so far, and I've really enjoyed doing this because it shows you what expectations are set up by the elements put on early in the book, like 10-15%, right? So like if you look at the first 10-15% of Boom, you have Jan, who is making his YouTube videos and wants to make it big so that he can take care of his family. And then people in weird Hawaiian outfits with American accents show up and give him explosives. So that sets up the first 10%. You know who he is, you know what he wants, and you know something sussy is going on. with Bodymore 1, the intro of the book has Joey, who's a mechanic, picking up a car in a place called, colloquially, as Murder Park, so you know that it's not good. And her friend is missing, and there's a body in the trunk. And so her friend is obviously going to... And then the next day, which is chapter 2, cops are at her workplace asking her about where her friend is. So you know already who the main character is, what's at stake, what's going on, and it sets up what the story is about. Is this person looking for her friend who is accused of murder? In Bodymore 0, which is a completely, it's a prequel to Bodymore with a completely different protagonist, you have Ralph and Casey, who are members of a band. Casey is a freaking wild thing who gets in a fight before his shows. And by the end of the hook area, he is stabbed and dies, and Ralph is on his own. And from the way Ralph is introduced, you see that he puts a lot of his identity and a lot of his reason for existing as being Casey's brother, because family is so important to him. And so, like, that gives a hint as to what is going to happen. Is he's going to either look for a family, or, since you already know Bodymore has ghosts, and if you've read Bodymore 2 and 3, then you know that Casey, or that Ralph brings Casey back to life, then you know that that is going to be the hook. But you know that this is going to relate to identity and the stakes of a best friend dying in this place. So I really like to use the hook to kind of gauge what we're being introduced to, what elements are being laid out, and if the story follows through with that. If you look at the search for elsewhere, whatever it was, with the fox and the wolf, the introduction of that did not have anything to do with where that story went later on, like with the wildlife thing. Like, there's no... And the bear. The whole thing was finding his family and then being told that he needed to go on an adventure of his own, and it was so bizarre. So I really like doing the hook at this point. It's great for projecting kind of where we're going, or guessing and seeing if we get there. Language, I also usually edit to language and or writing, and so that'll be the style of the prose, and I don't have any specific expression of what prose has to look like, since prose is very specific to not only the author but also the book, because prose can change based on the type of character it is. But I also usually put pacing under language, because however you do, since language is writing, and however you do your paragraphs or your sentence structures is going to change the pacing, the flow. And I often think of language, punctuation, grammar as being a conductor of literature, because you can use, your hard return spaces, your punctuations of semicolons and commas and periods and all of that, your spacing on pages, even having a blank page as a way of conducting the speed in which the reader reads. One thing that worked really, really well, I'm gonna compliment Twilight here, you guys. It's been like 15-20 years since I've read Twilight, but what I think it did in a very interesting way was showing how time passes when you're depressed. And so in the second book, when Bella, I still remember this. I read that book once, but I still remember this. And when Bella was depressed and not doing anything, it just had a blank page, and it said November, and another blank page, December, and another blank page, and just January, to show couldn't even remember what happened, because just so tuned out. And so while there are many people that get really fixated on what language and grammar looks like in a story, personally, I think that you can be really creative with those if you do them purposefully. there's a book on my shelf that have meant to read, but I just haven't gotten around to it, called Butcher Boy, and it is by an Irish author. And if you look inside of it, there's pretty much zero punctuation in it. And if you read it, especially if you read it out loud, you can see that it is told in a way that is very conversational, like you're listening to somebody just retell you the story of their life. And so this pacing of the words is so much different than if you have proper breaks in it, because you can also do like run-on sentences in a way, as long as you're marking like people are able to understand you. But if you're talking like this and then you're like, and then she said, why are you doing that? And I was like, well, I couldn't help but see that they needed help getting the couch up the stairs, and so I did that. And she was like, and so if you do that, you're going to usually put it in one paragraph, and you may or may not have quotation marks, because all of these things change the speed and the pauses and the way that you read, and it's so interesting. I know Cormac McCarthy also has a tendency to not use punctuation correctly, but creative writing is different than technical writing or formal writing, and I think that can sometimes be forgotten. But so language and writing don't have to be perfect, but this is kind of just where I talk about the techniques that I see that are notable in the way of the writing, or if there's none. Descriptions can be sensory, they can be about character, they can be about setting, just like how effective the descriptions were, or if some of the descriptions are just not good. I sometimes put those ridiculous descriptions in this section. But descriptions can cover a lot of things. World building has to do with how grounded a place feels. I'm not looking to discuss the Bible of a story, but where contradictions lie in a story, and or if I felt like it was done really well. Like when I was talking about Stephen Graham Jones's book with a vampire in it, that's where I discussed his vampire choices, I'm pretty sure. And I thought he had a very interesting take on vampires. But so world building doesn't have to be this big thing. It's just like the world in which you live in, does it feel lived in at all? And world building is every little thing that makes it feel like this world is functional, not just elves or robots or anything. It's every little thing in that world that makes it feel functional. Character, this section is very obvious. If I feel like a character should be talked about because of who they are or the role they played, then I put their name in here. I put the discussion of how their character came across, their weaknesses, their strengths, what I took away from that character. You have dialogue. I often don't use the dialogue because, I don't know, I haven't found too many books with notable dialogue in them that I want to be like this, but I will discuss how well the dialogue, like if the dialogue read naturally or not, and if there are any quotes for dialogue, I will put them here. This is where I will discuss the plot of the book, so like what does the book set up with the hook, and what is the overall plot arc, how that comes across, and I'll critique that. Then the themes and other themes, that'll be anything that I have not yet discussed. If there were any other notes in there, I just wanted another place to put everything in case it didn't fit into any of these categories. And then overall is the last judgment or notes or thoughts that I have, combining everything together and why I came to the conclusion, or with the conclusion that I came to. And in any case, when I am doing a book review, I don't feel like some of these are needed, I will just delete them and not use them. Like if you look at the Paper Tigers, I skipped pretty much all of these because I just didn't feel like it was worth it to discuss any of them. So that's how I do book discussions and book reviews. And as a final note, I'm going to tell you how I do my 1 to 5 star ratings, because if you go to my Goodreads, you'll see I'm a very harsh critic. I mean, even here, I'm a very harsh critic, but at least over there, you can see, like, very quickly the star ratings and see just how difficult I am to please fictionally. And so the way that my star scale works is a 1 star is, there were some massive rational problems with this. There were some massive logical problems with this book. I'm sitting here asking, why the heck are we doing this? Why the heck are we doing that? These characters are inconsistent. The story isn't going anywhere. The story at the end, the plot twists, whatever, they come out of nowhere, because all that I'm looking for in general in a story is a story that follows its own logic. I don't care if it is wild. Another way you know that is because 1, I like Death Stranding, 2, I like Model Land, 3, I like Empress Teresa. So I like stories that can be crazy and can be kind of out there, but the story has to follow its own logic. And so if I see continual major logical issues and zero character, you're going to get a 1. Now, 2 is there's potential in this. I see what's going on, what's attempted in this. The voice is there, but it still has logical issues, just not as bad as like other things. Then you're going to get a 2. If the story is fine, but it's just not to my taste, that's a 3. Now, if I actually start liking something, that's a 4. And then if I'm like, I love this book, I had so much fun with this book, I don't even freaking care about any flaws or whatever, it was just fun, or it was well written or well thought out to me, you get a 5. And so you can see what I think of those as well if you look at my 5-star reads. I often have better luck with nonfiction than with fiction because that's special interest. And so I only pick up specific things in nonfiction. But that doesn't mean that nonfiction books can't be poorly written. I'm still slowly reading the Quackery book, and that's probably a 4 instead of a 5, just because I'm not... Maybe it's a 3. Maybe it's a 3. Because I'm not super into the way that the author writes that book. But, so, end of the day, what have we learned about giving feedback to friends? Steel yourself regardless of your relationship. Try to be as kind as possible in your responses. If you're doing a reader review, and even if you're doing a critical review, you want to be careful. Know what the author or writer is looking for in the response from you, and know that you can get away with not doing a star rating. Also recognize if you're going to try to be objective in your response, which is are you talking about this book in this genre as opposed to it being how it interacts with your tastes, or are you going to do a personal response to that book? And know that when you are doing a book review, then you are using your voice, your identity, your credibility, your credentials, your whatever. Now, credentials are just you. You don't need credentials to say whether you like something or not. Your credentials are that you've read it or you viewed it. But just know that when you speak on something, it is you that people are listening to. They go to your takes, your perspective, your thoughts to see something about whatever it is you're discussing. So, and also just know that reviews and discussions on people's creativity is just a sensitive, difficult topic in general. So with that said, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Share your experiences, good or bad or neutral, with giving feedback, with giving book reviews, and I hope that you all will share your best tips on giving feedback on books, because Lord knows we can all use it, and the more perspective that we get on this, the more I think we can help each other in how we approach, or knowing how we want to approach when asked, or when we actually do give reviews. So with that said, thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend, and don't die.
To my children, Tommy, Ike, and Annabelle, if you forget everything else I ever said in the lifetime we shared together, I need you to remember 3 things. 1. Minimize violence done to and by women. As givers of life, it's against their nature, God's design, to do harm, and every act of violence done to them is meant to break their souls, turning what should be a giver of hope into a black widow. A woman who destroys the life and the mercy of her care for no other reason but the corruption of her own self. It is only when you come across these kinds of women that you should put them down, for they are no better than the men who tarnished them. However, take no glee in what must be done. Finding any life so far gone, a black hole is where someone's heart should be, leaves only one solution: the mercy of death, and it's a tragedy when it happens. Make no mistake, a woman's love is the most powerful thing on this earth. It can start wars, end them, and change the devil himself into someone God sees worthy of giving a second chance. She don't owe this love to anyone, but she do carry it around with her so long as she's living. That is why the devil will do everything he can to pervert women's nature and destroy their innocence. Of every crime you can commit during your lifetime, be it out of daring or necessity, for every defiance you may act out against God, government, or man, avoid harming the innocent. For the day that we become bloodthirsty beasts where love don't exist anymore is the day hell on earth has come. And as bad as it may seem at times nowadays, we ain't there yet. 2. Everything you do in your life will create consequences, both seen and unseen, extending further than you can imagine. Nothing you do exists solely within your arm's reach. Think about every decision you make, every action you take, because you won't know how long your choices will stalk you, be them destructions or blessings, rumors or history been made. The truth of the matter is, Your life will be controlled not by the truth of what you've done, but by the way others carry on about you. And the thoughts of others are more real in the long term than what you know to be true. It won't stop affecting you just 'cause it ain't real, and no matter the life you've lived, most men can't outrun what's written in them in ink. It ain't hopeless, though. Be firm in knowing who you are outside of the noise, and live beyond the means of the news of the day. 3. There ain't anything stronger than a family you build for yourself. What you put together is worth fighting for. Protect your loved ones with your life, and they'll give theirs in return. Family ain't defined by blood, understand that. And for as strong as the bonds of your family are, know that you'll find just as much passion in the people who hate you. While you'll risk your life for those you care about, those who find your existence to be an insult to theirs will risk themselves to put an end to their affliction. As cruel as it may seem, a man who hates you will stop at nothing until one of you is dead. It's a mistake to believe anything different. Don't let you be the ones taken from, be it by outlaw lawmen or by someone in between. The only one who'll be looking out for you is you and your kin. Maybe there's another way to be, but in all my years I've seen the worst of man, I ain't found another way around man's desire to conquer against all else. There ain't a changing of that mind, and sometimes I believe there ain't the ability for man to change at all, least of all through lead or legislation. I ain't claiming to be right about nothing. On many things, I don't want to be right. But what I do want is for my kids to live a better life than the one I did and avoid the mistakes that I made while finding the truth and purpose in what matter more than gold in this country. It's my hope that by sharing the things I learned that my kids will be better than their old man ever was, and that what I done isn't what people remember me for, but who y'all are going to become. That'll be the legend of Bill Cassidy.